that apparently the most compelling anti-elf statement that could be made by the people that are against elves is, watch out, everyone, the elves are coming to take your job.
Thanks for joining us here as we look at the next episode of The Rings of Power, The Great Wave. I'm here along with Michael Grumbine and Dan Coates, and we are going to go through this episode with an in-depth attitude, hopefully, so you get some more info out of it than you would have just on your first watch through, if you watched it at all. I know a lot of people are looking at this without watching it. But before I jump into that, I wanted to let you know that we do have a Patron platform now for The One Ring at theonering.com/patron. This gives you access to our message boards, to our extended podcast at Window of the West, windowofthewest.com, and also to, best part, our Discord server, the chat where we talk about the videos we make, and we're talking about the memes that we find and what we think of the Rings of Power and everything else Tolkien. So if you go to theonering.com/patron, you can join us there. It's $4 a month. First month is totally free, so you can get through the rest of the Rings of Power, and then you can cancel and you haven't paid anything. So no harm, no foul, and you can join us in the conversation. It's a lot of fun. So give that a shot. theonering.com/patron. And now let's jump into episode 4 of the Rings of Power. An hour and 11 minutes long.
But you know what, Jonathan? It's an hour and 11 minutes without a single dirty little sociopath.
So the first major storyline that we jump into here is the Muriel storyline.
So ignoring the fact that that the visuals are lacking, I want everyone to pay attention to the fact that remember this: Tar Muriel is being harassed by these visions from the Palantir, as we find out later, like you said, Jonathan. And the visions show her the destruction of Numenor. So this is supposed to be a big motivation. I'm going to talk about this later when we get to the actual motivation scene, when she makes her big decision with Galadriel. But just remember, the destruction of her entire people is being prophesied.
And as we find out in this vision, when the leaves fall from the silver tree or the white tree, that means that the gods are mad at you. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll get there too.
So we move on into the story of our Pharazon. And
I actually kind of like this character.
Yeah?
I kind of like how he's depicted as just kind of like this slimy, not slimy, but he's worldly wise. He's greasing palms. He's among the people. Like you get the feeling that he's like this populist that, he kind of knows how to run the mob,
He does indeed. What's interesting about that is in that scene, at the end of the scene, he wishes for wisdom from his own son, which is interesting. So he distinguishes between cleverness and wisdom, which is interesting.
And I think this is this your either both of you or one of you, this has got to be your favorite scene because you were talking about it earlier.
The crowd is riled up. The people of Numenor rise up to this rabble-rouser whose message is, watch out, everyone. Elves will take your job.
Don't tire. Don't age.
Elves don't tire, don't age.
I say, the queen's either blind or an elf lover.
So I would remind our viewers that apparently the most compelling anti-elf statement that could be made by the people that are against elves is, watch out, everyone. The elves are coming to take your jobs. When there has been literally one elf on the island in centuries, one, and now the elves are coming to take your jobs. It's so unbelievable from a story writing and storytelling perspective. Yeah, the idea that there's an economic incentive is so, to me, it smacks so clearly of a direct political injection from the modern political era.
Yeah, and I feel like the writers of the show, they rely so much on either prior interest in the movies of Peter Jackson, or they're right here, they're relying on just the modern day sensibilities of people. They're relying on like, oh yeah, we just had 4 years of Orange Man bad, so let's get all these people riled up with this populist, nativist, xenophobic rhetoric, and that'll trigger in their brains, oh yeah, I've seen this before. I know where this is coming from. I know where this is going to go. Like that's their storytelling at this point. Is just relying on something you already have in the back of your mind.
Men of Numenor, or a gaggle of mewling children? We are sons and daughters of the Edain, of Elros Tar-Miniatur, whose host conquered Morgoth himself.
And I'm a little tired of the Morgoth and Numenor and Galadriel.
Also, they're terrible at trilling. When you speak one of the, for example, the Latin-based languages which do have trilled R's, no one does. It's so obvious that it just sounds stupid.
All right.
But now one elf, a castaway, could threaten us. The heritage of mighty hands, of men who laid the sea wall.
We're going to find out later, like, this isn't the only scene with a crowd in this episode. And what was striking to me by the end of the episode, I was looking at these massive shots from half a mile up over the capital city of Numenor. It's like, this is amazing. There's so many, it's such a massive city, but apparently it's only peopled by 67 people because that's the most that ever occurs.
Well, you know why?
Any scene.
It's all the ones who are angling for a free drink. It's the ones that know to stick around because the politicians.
Civilization. But now
all they do in order to get this is to hand out the free drink here at the end.
Well, that's what I called in my notes some small tavern spell. Yes, at the end of the speech.
my friends, trust in me.
Here we go.
For by the calluses on my hands, I swear that elven hands will never take Numenor's helm. She will remain, as always, a kingdom of men.
I've never heard anybody swear by the calluses of their hands. That's a new one.
Drinks all round.
This is
Drinks
how you summon a
all
tavern.
around.
So and then instantly a tavern appears because I mean this writing feels more and more like a mediocre D&D module every episode to me.
Somebody, there was a theory going around that Amazon had another show that was like a dragon themed show, and they just basically slapped Tolkien on it. They're like, "Here you go, we'll make this."
I believe that.
Out of all the characters that they've introduced on this show so far, he seems to be one that understands motivations and understands rationally like what people want and how to get what he wants, compared to like say Galadriel, who's 5,000 years old and doesn't. So like I don't know, it's just interesting.
Yeah.
So are the
Sorry.
you guys can teach me some knowledge here because I'm not there in the Silmarillion yet. But the descendants or the people that make up Numenor, aren't they the descendants of Elros?
Yes.
Like all of them. So like where is all this diversity coming from? I don't think that's an unfair question to ask. I mean, clearly the showrunners
Stop
they don't care.
asking questions.
I mean, they don't care. They just say, "Here, deal with it." And if you don't like it, you're a
they say
bigot.
something more. Yeah, you're a racist. That's what they say.
Yeah.
They say if you dare to ask a question about how this could possibly make sense in any way, shape, or form, then you're a racist. And to use a Middle Earth analogy, there is actually a place. If this story had taken place in the port city of Pelargir, the largest port in the world, for example, I would actually, this would be believable because in Pelargir you would have the mixing of the Haradrim and the men of the north and east. You would have elves, you would have Numenorians, you have everyone, and so it would make sense to have a very cosmopolitan marketplace, for example. But on an island of Numenor that's apparently been keeping to itself for 1,000 years, you're absolutely right, Jonathan. It makes no sense whatsoever. And that's why you're a racist. Sorry, dude.
We're barely through this thing, and look at we're right into the next massive scene of where Galadriel once again puts her people skills to use.
That's right. So just to summarize, in this scene, Galadriel is calling on Tar-Miriel to rise to war instantly because she said so and she's angry. That's it. Like, that's the reason. That's because that's why all great nations go to war, is because some 14-year-old shakes their fist. Oh, wait, we do have, the Swedish. She's not Swedish. So there's that.
She's like that kid in Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. I want it. I want it. I want it right now.
How dare you?
His people are scattered, leaderless. But with your backing, they might unite behind his banner and fight.
What do you mean, backing?
Sauron was once your people's enemy, as much as mine. I call on you to finish the task left undone, to reforge the alliance between Numenor and Elves.
So my favorite, though, that is coming up here when Tarmilio tells her, like, how about no? And then walks away. And she starts hyperventilating. Like, Galadriel starts doing what my 3-year-old does. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Then I have little choice but to ask for another. One with Numenor's true ruler.
Whoa. See, so their true ruler, which...
So she pulls rank and says she's going to go to the true ruler.
Your father,
she doesn't actually pull
the
rank.
king.
She just threatens to go above.
Yeah.
You should not speak of matters you do not understand, Galadriel, daughter of Finarfin.
And you should stand aside, that I might present my proposal to one who holds the authority to answer it.
Lady Galadriel, that is quite
And with
enough.
what authority do you speak, Elf? That of your people.
But then here we go.
This is the first moment I've liked Galadriel.
It's really
There it
great.
is.
I was just gonna say, I was watching this with the closed captioning, and it's really great. At the bottom of this, it says "Gate slams, lock clicks," and I was just yes.
Oh my gosh.
And I have to say, in this particular moment, I actually just enjoyed the fact that the 13-year-old freaking out got what she deserved for once. I mean, it just is like,
Yeah.
this is exactly what should have happened. When my daughter and I were watching it, we were actually surprised by it because we didn't expect it. As I mentioned to you earlier, Jonathan, I think like George R.R. Martin would have slapped Galadriel in that position because he at least understands the way regents hold dear the power and the authority that's vested in them. So when you challenge their authority like Galadriel did, that's actually an act of sedition, and this is the proper response.
Yeah. This is the least objectionable part of the story, maybe. Because we get to meet Adar.
Very interesting. Yeah, partially corrupted elf. I don't know if I would go with as far as into an orc because the structure of his face and everything, his body is still elf-like. I like this character. I really do. I like what they're somebody. I kind of feel like with this whole Rings of Power series that there's probably 20-something writers, and there's 2 of them that I like. And so most of it is terrible writing, and then once in a while they have these themes, which it's pretty cool actually. It's a good idea. He says one thing that's interesting, where he says, "I'm not a god yet."
Yeah.
So he clearly has plans for advancement of himself.
Yeah. So after Adar, we do have the refugees going to their version of Helm's Deep, I guess.
You have the typical in this scene. You got Bronwyn being the leader that people they don't have a lot of confidence in her, including her own son, who then goes off with young bigot number 1 that we meet. I mean, he was the first bigot that was like called around your knife ears back in the tavern. This was Rowan, the friend. It's the same guy, and so it's the same kid. So young bigot.
I find this setup is so unbelievable to me that even if you're in a rush and you're in a panic and you're like, oh no, there's orcs attacking us, let's all go to the stronghold. They show up at the stronghold and they have like 4 pieces of bread. It's like, didn't anyone think to like pack a little bit, just something,
And also, when there were no orcs that came pouring out of tunnels, they would have gone back and got their stuff, in groups during the day, for example.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the forge that they're building? That's what I assumed, right? Am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
No, you're not wrong. This is the forge. This is the clearest example. It's so clear that there's literally nobody for $1 billion paying attention to whether their threads can actually make sense in one day. Because if the threads made sense, then what was happening in Numenor happened one day ago. Galadriel was walking free, parkouring all over the city, and then the next day she's behind the bars. While she was parkouring in the city, Elrond is having a conversation with Durin about them helping. One day later, we have 6 to 12 months of construction done. Even if the dwarves can all fast travel, even if they've all earned their little stables and they can fast travel over to Eregion, this is utterly absurd. This is like 12.
Because if you're following any of the other plot lines, like Arendir, he gets captured. The next day he wakes up and he sees all his buddies are there. They spend a day digging, and then they have their little rebellion, and then he gets brought to Adar and then set free. So what is that? Maybe 2 days?
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
And then we cut to this, and it's like 6 months have gone by.
Right. Yeah.
And then we're going to go back to 2 days, the 2-day timeline. It's not even like they don't explain to us that 6 months have passed, which would be bad, but it's that 6 months are passing in this storyline, whereas the other storyline, it's still hours.
Yeah.
That's it.
But then we magically get Elrond back in Khazad-dûm. Sorry. Okay, can we watch this, guys? Can we watch this? In silence. We'll just do it in silence, right? Here we go. What? Right? Once more, what? Someone in our Discord channel pointed this out. thorny.com/Patron. You can join us there. And pointed out it looks like this scene from the Emperor's New Groove.
I can't believe this is happening.
Then I bet you weren't expecting
It's so great.
The thing that bothers me the most about where they take the dwarves and Elrond in episode 4 is that I kind of started to like them in episode 2 or episode 3 or whenever that was, when they finally kind of reconnect. And like, hey, maybe there's a friendship here. We can maybe start establishing like how they know each other and going back into their history a little bit. Their family life we were shown their family life. And so now it's like, oh, characters we care about. Great. And then the very next scene, she's already lying to him. Months have gone by. It's like, what happened to that relationship in the last 6 months? Like, I just like, what happened in those 6 months? It all went away.
Now, I get what you're saying, Dan, especially because of the timeline. I actually still liked this, and I think the main reason I liked it is because Elrond doesn't actually take offense. He doesn't turn it into some drama thing. He still maintains his attitude of friendship, even though they're hiding something from him, and he just figures out what it is. And there's some cool stuff aside from the overly done, telling us over and over again how much Disa and Durin the Fourth are into each other, which is okay, fine. I mean, great. You're married. That's awesome. So, but then they do it. Elrond listening to the stone thing, that's cool. I like that because that's Legolas. Legolas shows us that elves can do that when the Fellowship first reaches Holland, the land of Holland, which is outside of Eregion, actually, or there's the land around which Eregion exists as well. So that was a cool elven throwback where he's listening to the stone because the stone is. I mean, I think that's what it is. So anyway, that was what I was taken back to, was Legolas talking about how the stones speak to him of the people of the elves who lived in Eregion long ago. Okay. And so anyway, that was I thought that was cool, and the little dwarven masks that open out from the front. That was funny. Yeah. I mean, it was. I didn't mind it. I also like this scene. So, and here's why I like it, because Elrond is actually clever. He's remembering that Disa was telling her children to stop their rhyming when they were chanting out this rhyme that Elrond repeats, and he connects that and is thinking. I mean, I think that's what's going on, where he realizes, oh, she didn't. This is all connected to what she didn't want me to hear. So, and then there's the call back to dwarven doors opening because of words and phrases being spoken. Yeah. Well, I do like this scene. I like it. I like it in their relationship. It's not. Here's one of the things I like. Elrond does not react the way an angsty human, which is all the humans,
Galadriel
would react. Well, Galadriel's an angsty human. I mean, she has pointy ears, but she's an angsty 13-year-old.
Nice.
but there's, Elrond in this whole scene, when he has emotion like anger thrown at him and distrust and stuff, he responds in a very elven way. He doesn't devolve into the same kind of behavior. He holds on to his friendship. He doesn't assume the worst of Durin. I'm going to dovetail into your theory, Jonathan. I agree with you on what I do think the writers like it. My theory that I'm going to dovetail in is the one I said earlier. I think that like 2 out of the 34 writers on this show are good, and one of those, and they're both working on this.
That's right. Yeah, you're probably right. And we jump back to Numenor with Elendil's daughter. But then we get right back into the jailed Galadriel.
I mean, this is the dumbest thing. I mean, it's the like you said earlier, Jonathan. They just think we're idiots.
Yeah.
It's so insulting. Even as an action scene. I actually, like, if you're going to write a good action scene and someone's going to have, like, politically speaking, we have the perfect warrior and it's warrior woman, powerful Galadriel. Okay, fine. But the people that are choreographing these action scenes are terrible. They're terrible. Like, this is not even believable. It's like she's just like shoving lightly, like these huge men into this, and they're all sort of standing. The 3 others are standing there. There were 4 total, and so the 3 of them are. It isn't even believable.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't even like she's showing the strength of Wonder Woman or whatever. I mean, she would have to, of course, to do this, but. Her physical actions are terrible. The physical fight choreography is bad. Oh no!
I laughed so hard when I saw this. I'm like, no! And then she breaks the window, and Muriel's like, I knew you'd be here. I knew you'd come. I'm like, oh, through the window up the 300 sheer wall?
That's right. You were expecting it. Mm-hmm.
And that's what drives me nuts about her character arc. At every moment when there's a opportunity for her to like learn or change or like have some kind of tension where she's like, hey, maybe you're right. Maybe like how Halbro's talking to her in jail. Like, you can't come at it like this. You got to do it like that. And she takes that in and she's like, oh yeah, maybe you're right. But then she goes right back to just doing what she was doing before. She's busting out of jail. She's climbing up towers. She's going to go see the king because she wants to go see the king. It's like they, at every moment where there could be a tension with her character, like, hey, here's some flaws, here's some things you need to work through. It's like, no, just keep doing what you're doing. It's working. It's going to work eventually. Like, I was kind of connecting it to Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel's like the same problem, that she's emotional. She acts at an impulse, and she does that at the beginning of the movie, and she does it at the end of the movie, and it's like her being her authentic self throughout the whole story. That's being the hero for Captain Marvel. And it's all the people around her that are telling her like different things that are they're the ones that are wrong.
Well, it's so very true, Dan. And now we're coming to the part. There's about 5 minutes of dialogue here, but this to me is kind of indicative of the heart of the bad writing. These, just like they can't understand a metaphor, they do come up with one metaphor that Jonathan, you pointed out, was actually decent for metaphor. But just like they had such trouble with metaphors in previous episodes, in this episode with this conversation, we're led to a reality where Tarmiriel shows Galadriel through the Palantir the same kinds of visions of the destruction of Numenor she's been having. So Tarmiriel is saying, here's my motivation. It's that I'm afraid that Numenor is going to be destroyed because the gods are angry with us, which, by the way, she would have known that they're not gods, because actually the Numenorians were the one people of all the races of men that knew that there was one God and worshiped him. Even though the worship of him was something that was denigrated in later years, like we're at here, nevertheless, she would have known that they're not gods. But anyway, so she's saying the gods are angry with us. They're going to destroy us. I've had these visions. Okay, so that's a motivation, lazy motivation, like Jonathan says, because it's injected from the outside from a prophetic or magical source. Okay, fine. But it's a motivation. So you're going to save your people, right? Because you don't want this to happen to them. And and then Tarmiriel herself connects the saving of her people to the loss of their virtue, that we're going to get damned and destroyed because we've lost our virtue. And she says it a couple of times. And then Galadriel says, well, your virtue is being loyal to the elves, which utterly idiotic statement. But I come to expect utterly idiotic statement from 13-year-old Galadriel. So I pass that by with a wince and a grimace. So then now we have a situation where Tarmiriel's like being faced with the virtuous thing to do and the thing that will keep us from being destroyed, according to the writing of this show, is for me to not let us go into this corruption where we hate elves and we abandon the ways of the elves. And her very next decision is, but I'm going to abandon you. What? Why? Like, you're supposed to be motivated. This makes literally, it's the opposite of anything that makes sense. You're supposed to be motivated to save your people by keeping them from falling, their virtue from falling, which we've identified through bad logic is being loyal to the elves. So the obvious answer is, and this is why I'm going to go against the will of my people, and I'm going to keep you, Galadriel, here. Which, by the way, she does at the end of the episode. But until that point, she's going to not do that against every single motivation that we've been told by the writers that she has. So she has literally no motivation to make the decision that she's decided to make.
The one line that I thought sounded good, which made way more sense than a rock looks down and a ship looks up, is faith may bind one heart, but it is too fine a thread to hang a kingdom. I'm like, oh.
It was the faith was in her, but once the faith became about white petals blowing in your face, then the faith became strong enough to hang a kingdom on. Once the white petals, not when you've experienced the destruction of your people through this object telling the future. Oh no, that's not enough. It's when the white petals hit your face that you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's about I guess we should do the elves. We should help the elves. This was so bad. The cinematography is so terrible. It is the essence of that. There's a trope in the cinematic world called behind the black. And no, it's not racist. It's got nothing to do with skin color. It means the black is the black of the screen. So it's that thing that happens, especially in bad horror movies, where the characters that are in your shot can't see anything beyond what's in your shot. So there's somebody 5 feet next to them, but that character in this trope is called behind the black. So they can't be seen by anyone in your shot because they're right there. That if you follow this 60 seconds or 90-second sequence, that happens so often between Oryx and Theo, where they're like passing through, like literally they can all see each other.
No, it feels
they all know where each other are, but they can't because you can't see it.
So this whole action scene here,
I actually liked the sun breaking out. I thought that was
right.
I thought this was a cool action scene. There was actually a reason for it.
Yes.
The orcs were chasing them to get the. I actually think the orcs would have been more suicidal in the event. Like, this was the one thing they were searching for, was this sword. So I thought that some of them anyway would have run out and then got killed, and then maybe the others would have held back. But anyway, the fact they all held back, okay, I'm fine. But this is a beautiful scene. Like this, it's showing the sun, and it's how basically the rising of the sun is the friend of good people, of the good people of Middle Earth. And this is a theme in Tolkien throughout the Lord of the Rings and throughout the Silmarillion as well.
Yeah. Okay. And we get a scene where between Elrond and Durin, where they call back to who slayed the trolls.
It became a throwaway joke with the wife making fun of her husband, or teasing her husband. With Elrond's input. But anyway, I didn't mind it. I thought it was it was good. And then the scene afterwards where he talks to his father, and his father sends him to Lindon. I thought that was good, actually. And
this dude is all into Sauron. So
this is like the Dare program for kids. Like, this is the guy that comes up to you behind the 7-Eleven and he's got the cigarettes or whatever. He's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of cigarettes, kid?" This is the guy you avoid.
Earlier in this episode, I said that the guy who owned the farmhouse was the one that was talking. It wasn't. So maybe you were right, Jonathan. Maybe it was that guy was the tavern keeper, because this guy's clearly a different guy, different old white bigot. And so he's a Sauron lover.
So the episode closes with a little bit of Adar here and a little bit of Galadriel as she.
You're like, "Hey, Galadriel, you can sit now. It's okay. Please be seated."
No, she's not. She's going to stand the whole way back to Middle Earth. Luckily for her, she doesn't have to, because all of Tarmiriel's old and powerful motivations, which failed to convince her to let Galadriel stay, are instantly swept aside because white leaves are blowing in her face, and she's like, "I've changed my mind." And so Galadriel's there, and now Tarmiriel's calling for a war to go to the Middle Earth and fight Sauron. And then something weird happens because it turns out apparently that there's no way for the... Okay. All right, listeners, just a quick note. Numenor, in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, a guy who never appears in this movie, is the most powerful empire of man, kingdom of men that has ever existed. They have an army so powerful, they are the only civilization ever to defeat Sauron by force of arms. In fact, they didn't even need to use that much because Sauron's armies mostly gave up when they saw the size of the Númenórean and the power of the Númenórean forces. So that's what we're dealing with here. But apparently in this show, that kind of civilization, A, doesn't have its own standing army, and B, has 67 people, same 67 people in the crowd, who a few of whom have to be convinced to join the army reluctantly. I mean, look, if the army that you do have is as effective as those 4 guardsmen that couldn't keep an elf, that like got manhandled into their own jail cell by an elf, I'd probably want a new army too. So there's that.
Yeah.
So I don't really get that. So the whole thing for Isildur makes zero sense. He just he hears a voice speaking to him from the island. That's why he can't join the guard. But now he's going to go join an expeditionary force to invade Middle Earth. Like, why?
Okay. The answer, Dan, is because you're racist.
That's right. It's always the answer. When in doubt, see step 1. Step 1, admit you're racist. To return to the beginning from whence we came. This is still the best of the 4 episodes because there were no dirty little sociopaths. Because there are no dirty little sociopaths, this is my favorite episode.
Where do we go from here? I mean, I guess there's going to be people going across the ocean and fighting the orcs in the Southland.
Do you guys want to do a bet to see if like the very next cut to this plot line is they're already there?
Yeah, they'll be in Linden. They'll be in the Southlands. Yeah, everything's going to be an instant. Oh my goodness.
I will be highly surprised, Dan. I will not bet you because I'm highly surprised if we get any shots of the armies.
I mean, I thought I had a problem when I read, and I mentioned this before, when I read Robert Jordan's books of too much time spent traveling between places. But this is the exact opposite. There is no time spent traveling between places.
Well, I mean, look, your criticism is right, Jonathan, and it's not different. It's not saying, well, I was complaining about one thing and now I'm complaining about the opposite. That's actually the same complaint because real virtue, according to the tradition of the Greeks and civilization, modern civilization, Western civilization, I know it's a bad word, Western, but is, as voiced by Aristotle, is that the virtue is found as the mean between 2 extremes. So you're complaining about both extremes, but Aristotle would say that's right. Because the virtue is found in the middle, not necessarily exactly halfway, but it's in the mean between 2 extremes. And so what we have here is 2 extremes, and 2 didn't show anything versus showing too much in Jordan.
So guys, okay, I'm going to ask both of you, just on a scale of 1 to 10, give me a number.
Okay, I'm going to give 2 numbers. Because, like our previous episodes we mentioned, there's 2 filters I look at these things through. First is the Tolkien filter. How close is it to Tolkien's world? How true does it stay to the source material? That will always be an important factor for me. Second, how good is it just as story writing and entertainment in general? So from a Tolkien perspective, this episode was like a 2.5. Because there were some elements that I found cool that were interesting. Almost all of it was not Tolkien though. From a good story writing and entertainment perspective, this episode's a 6. Because I really do find some of the the dwarf and elf storylines compelling. I like what Adar, what they're doing. Yeah. I like Adar, and I do want to see more of the might of Numenor. Although I'm afraid community theater is gonna let me down a bit.
So Dan,
I'd give it about a 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I'll be generous. I'll give it a 5.
Give it a 5. I was going to give it a 4.
It's the same mediocre gruel that we get from the general entertainment culture. Yeah, so mediocrity deserves. I'll revise from a 6 down to a 5 probably. but there's a but as a Tolkien fan and watching this from a Tolkien perspective, it's a 2.
All right. Well, Thanks for listening to our in-depth-ish review of The Rings of Power, The Great Wave. If you enjoyed it, and if you got this far in our video, you probably did, so go ahead and press the subscribe button, hit the little bell, share it, like it. And if you really, really enjoyed it, we'd appreciate your support over at theonering.com/patron. That's our Patron platform that gives you access to a Discord server, to the upcoming message boards, to an extended podcast, our Window on the West podcast at windowonthewest.com. And it keeps us going. It will hopefully resolve some of our technical issues that we've had at times, but we're upgrading our equipment. And we really like the conversations that we have on the Discord server. It's fun to get people's feedback on the things that we're talking about and the things that Rings of Power is doing. And we get some good ideas there of the things to talk about. So go ahead and go over there. It's $4 a month. First month is free, so that'll get you through to the Rings of Power if you want to just chat for a month. So go for it. In the meantime, we are on to episode 5 of the Rings of Power. No name yet. We'll find out soon. But we hope you join us there. So we'll see you then next week as we review the Rings of Power. Take care.